3 million end users impacted, organized by the Water and Energy for Food Grand Challenge. I'm Katie Bailey, the in-person moderator for the session, and I'm joined by my online counterpart, Noemi Tokplen. We're the communications managers for the program. Thank you for joining this session, both in person and virtually. Before we get started, some quick housekeeping. If you are joining online, you can submit questions at any time, and we will save them for the Q&A at the end of the session. For the in-person participants, you can also save your questions for that time. Today's session will feature speakers from BMZ and USAID, as well as 3 innovators and a panel of representatives from CETA, NORAD, and participation from one of the We4F partners. To formally launch this session, please join me in welcoming Rike Son, the Senior Policy Advisor for International Water Governance at the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Okay. Thank you, Katie, for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to see so many people here, and dear also co-speakers and partners, innovators, esteemed guests, and online participants. It's my real pleasure on behalf of the German Federal Ministry for Economic Development, for Economic Cooperation and Development. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this lessons learned session of the Water and Energy for Food Grand Challenge. So as we all know, water is a necessary component for sustainable food production and resilient agricultural food systems. In nearly all countries of the world, agriculture is the largest user of water, with a total of 70% of the world's freshwater resources, affecting global water budget and allocation. So therefore, I think the global food crisis is also a global water crisis. And on top of that, the food sector accounts for about 1/3 of global energy consumption, almost 30% of greenhouse gas emissions. As global population grows, also the demand for food will increase steadily, and this will be accompanied by a 30% increase in water demand, especially in irrigated agriculture, and a 60% increase in energy consumption by 2050. So the international initiative, Water and Energy for Food, tackles many of these issues by aiming to reduce hunger and poverty, protect biodiversity, and our climate. Its approach is to strengthen private investments that promote sustainable development and overall transform agricultures and food systems on a global scale. Our commitment to the initiative is based on our nexus strategy for interlinkages between water, energy, and agriculture that the BMZ developed back in 2019, with the objective to overcome trade-offs and identify synergies between the sectors. And the supported innovations are ranging from organic fertilizers, solar water pumps, solar-powered cold storage, to digital lending platforms and remote weather forecasts. They all represent a diverse array of solutions to global challenges, such as climate change and water scarcity. Since the Grand Challenge was initiated in 2019, initially 4 donors joined the initiative to unite forces, and I'm very happy that we're now 6 donors supporting us. I'm very happy that today conveners, innovators, and partners come together to celebrate 4 years of a multi-donor initiative that successfully incorporate the water, energy, and food nexus. 4 years, 5 regions, 42 countries, 168 innovative companies, 3 million of end users impacted, 6 million tons of food grown through innovative agtech solutions. This is an impressive result. One crucial question when we have achieved all this is what is happening after the lifetime of such a program. And I'm very happy, and I think it's also very unusual to have such a huge success. Innovators and panelists here will provide us with the first-hand perspectives on the experience with the program, its successes, its challenges, and how they have overcome them and the lessons they learned while doing it. And we will discuss how we can sustain success. So let me just mention one aspect that impressed me a lot. The seed funding of the program has helped the companies leverage an additional $183 million US. And I think this is a real legacy of the program, strengthening our innovator network and improve the accessibility of sustainable technologies in Africa and Asia, far beyond the program's lifetime. So you can really see what you can do if you have people that are smart, have smart solutions that are able to leverage beyond the initial amount of, I think, 183 million. It's fantastic. So therefore, very confident that the success of water and energy for food will inspire more commitment to future innovative partnerships and projects in the water, energy, food nexus. And we surely need initiatives like this to mitigate global challenges. Before hearing our experts' view, I would like to express my deep gratitude to every single partner and contributor, and especially to all panelists and innovators for having contributed to this success of the program during the last years. Thank you very much, and I enjoy the session.
Thank you, Rike, for the introduction to the Nexus. Now, to further highlight We4F's results, please welcome Ada Ihanachor, who is the team lead for Water and Energy for Food Grand Challenge from USAID.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. Thank you, Rike, for the wonderful introduction to We4F and really highlighting those important program updates and really sharing really cool things about what we're doing the Nexus. So I'd like to thank all the We4F donors for their participation here today. We would not be able to be here without you, and really appreciate your continued support for the program. Chris, Claire, Noel, Mashiri, thanks for making the time and tremendous effort to be here. We're really looking forward to hearing your ongoing field perspectives on the program. We have a lot to learn from you. And Katie, thanks for making this possible. It's a lot of legwork and logistical support that you've provided. And to those attending in person, online, thank you for making the time to be here and demonstrating your commitment to supporting our work in the water, energy, food nexus. Even though we have a lot of lessons to share with you from the program, we also hope that this is a dialogue, and we also look forward to hearing your insights about your work in the same water, energy, food nexus. So as you can tell, we're here as a program, also serving different roles and sharing unique perspectives from the lens that we're able to see the program from. But we're also hoping that if you take one message with you, it's that by leveraging the private sector and harnessing local wisdom, we're able to make meaningful impact. So as Rike highlighted, We4F has supported over 160 small, medium-sized enterprises, or as we like to call them, innovators, because they're doing innovative work. And these We4F supported innovations have impacted over 3 million end users around the world. And we do this work by supporting 5 regional innovation hubs that are located in specific focused geographic areas around the world: West Africa, East Africa, Southern and Central Africa, the Middle East and North Africa, as well as South and Southeast Asia. And these hubs provide very bespoke support to our innovators. And these include providing technical support, providing grants directly to our innovators, also providing enabling environment support, and finally, investment readiness / investment facilitation support. And this support is customized, of course, to the needs and local context of our innovators. So each, as I mentioned before, so this makes We4F truly a global program, but uses localized approaches to achieve the impacts that Rike highlighted earlier. So in addition, we would like to really highlight and emphasize for you all that We4F goes beyond end user impact and food production to also positive environmental and social benefits. So Some of it will be a little bit repetitive of what Rike has mentioned earlier, but I think it's really important for us to really emphasize these results. So Rike mentioned the 6 million tons of food that we've provided under the program. And I think this is really important because we've been able to achieve this alongside water savings, energy savings, and carbon dioxide emissions equivalent reductions, as well as increased income. So I think this is pretty spectacular and impressive. And more specifically, water consumption we've reduced this by 10 billion liters. So for those of us, myself included, that follow the Summer Olympics, this is the equivalent of nearly 500 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So we were able to accomplish these water savings by supporting technologies such as hydroponic systems, drip irrigation, and the use of digital platforms, which enabled our end users, farmers, to be able to monitor and track their own water usage, and also build their capacity around crop production. In addition to water savings, I would also like to speak a little bit on our energy innovations, and we've contributed to climate mitigation efforts as we are incentivizing our end users to move away from fossil fuels and diesel-powered technologies to focus on renewable energy sources, saving about 1.2 billion kilowatt hours in the process of doing so. I would also like to take this opportunity to highlight our We4F final evaluation report, which is available, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, on our website, www.we4f.org. And one of the key findings that we highlighted within the report was that we've increased crop per drop, which was a key finding of We4F's work. And this is important because for countries like Zambia and Egypt that are experiencing droughts and water stress, we're able to fully demonstrate that water efficient innovations like I've highlighted with you can help end users become more productive as well as climate resilient. This is really important for today's world. And then finally, I'd like to mention that these innovations have saved about 1.5 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions equivalent. So it shows that we're not able to not only increase our food production, but be able to do so in such an environmentally friendly way. And we're really proud of this. So to ensure that, so it's one thing to have these technologies, but also to make them accessible and affordable for our end users who are mostly base of the pyramid and women. So we have worked with innovators and stakeholders, especially within the financial sector, to make these innovations accessible and affordable by using different types of innovative financing schemes. So these financial products are designed to meet our end users' needs, using, sort of more creative repayment methods that fit their schedules as well as their agricultural production activities. So these financial benefits extend to end users' incomes, like I mentioned before, with more than 1 million of our end users experiencing an increase in their incomes and livelihoods. So this is due to, as I've mentioned, the shift to renewable energy sources, increases in yields, access to more affordable agriculture inputs, and to highlight a few. So in conclusion, this work that we do, these impressive results really push us to keep doing the work that we do, to help us to develop more adaptive programming and to create a more sustainable water, energy, food nexus. So I really look forward to the ongoing dialogue around the water, energy, food nexus. Look forward to hearing from our innovators and our local experts in the field who will share their on-ground realities with you, as well as encourage you to also share your experiences and lessons that you've learned doing the same work in the water, energy, food nexus. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ada, for your inspiring words and for highlighting the successes of the program. Before we introduce the innovators and share their different innovations, I'd like to take this moment for you all to participate in a Mentimeter to gain your insights and thoughts on the water, energy, food nexus. So if you guys could switch to the slide. So it generally seems that there's a consensus that the water, energy, food nexus is critical to addressing today's global crises. I would hope so. After our opening speakers, I'd be a little bit concerned if you were all unsure or didn't think so. If you could switch to the next Mentimeter, if you would still like to participate in it, the next question is a word cloud to kind of gain what your thoughts are in terms of like the challenges. So we're definitely seeing financing and funding as a big challenge. And I think the first answer we had of complexity really sums up what these answers are showing us, that it's not a simple problem. It's not one that has only one challenge, but a large variety of challenges and barriers for innovators, end users, and other stakeholders to try to overcome. Great. Well, I think this is probably going to keep going, but I would like to introduce the first speaker of Noel Ngosin, who is the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Lono, a biotech company in Cote d'Ivoire that focuses on converting organic waste into electricity and fertilizer. I think he might be able to talk about some of these different items or challenges that are happening.
So hi, everyone. I'm Noel Nguessan. I'm co-founder of Lono, based in Cote d'Ivoire. I'm a chemical engineer by training. So I will be discussing one of the projects that was supported by the Water Energy for Food program, based in Cote d'Ivoire, but with some activities in other West African countries. So the brand name is Cubeco, for Cube Écologique, but you'll know in a second what it is. So what we do as a business, because we are a business, what we do as a business, like essentially is implementing circular economy models at the scales that are relevant to the smallholder farmers in Cote d'Ivoire, West Africa. So we go a little bit further to cooperatives and even further to smaller SMEs that are off-takers of what these smallholder farmers are producing. So if you look at the situation, I mean, there's 2 to 10 kilos of waste per kilogram of actual produce sold or processed. Can be peels, can be husks, can be, you know, all types of things, but it's dispersed. There's no value proposition clearly that is accessible to the owners of this waste to actually capture the value. So that's what we try to implement with business cases. Process engineering, because it's a process, you're going from A to B, but also a little bit of agronomy, because the raw material comes from agriculture, but also one of the products of this processing is often organic fertilizer. So there's agronomy in there. And the kind of raw materials we're looking at, or processes, products, sorry, there's a compost, organic fertilizer, there's biochar, which is becoming more and more used as a soil amendment as well. clean cooking gas, biogas, and also sanitation services. So initially, we're much more on the agricultural solid and wastewater and agro-processing wastewater, but we're getting more into human organic wastewater as well. So what does this mean? Accessible circular, business models. So if I look at the case of Cote d'Ivoire with 2 million smallholder farmers producing 80% of what's produced in Cote d'Ivoire, this is the scale of agriculture there. So that's what it means. Something that can make sense at that scale, even though there are aggregators as well. So you need to look at what the aggregators are doing. So we try to combine on single sites these three processes, so composting, anaerobic digestion, and biochar production, so that all year round the site can be active and create value, because all the waste is seasonal. Not all waste is equal. Some waste is drier than other waste, etc., or richer in potassium and other things. So we try to simplify this technical, breakdown that I'm giving now. We really try to simplify to make it super straightforward at that scale, while still being able to do accounting at the end of the month and make extra value than what you spent. So each location also then, one example of the things that are small but big is just to make sure that the waste sourcing for the location that you've set up is secure, even if it's just 2 tons a day, that is secure. And that's done by having a tricycle, for example, built into the business case or the investment case of every site. I guess we can discuss a bit more later. One big thing, the partners tend to be cooperatives, but we like the off-taking cooperatives, but also the processing cooperatives. So it depends. Cassava is completely different to cocoa or cotton. So yeah. Now, water energy for food. So we're a business, but we do need to validate our business models. And that's where water energy for food came in to really help with where we know the investment is not commercial. It's more trial. It's more demonstration or training or capacity building. So 800 farmers were impacted. About 230 were women farmers on cassava processes. 550 hectares were fertilized. So we also have an organic fertilizer factory that has been able to anchor a lot of our extensions, because we're able to quickly deploy training sites, because if you have production, it's just step one to demonstration. Able to treat 400 cubic meters of wastewater per year with the different units installed. In terms of energy, so there's thermal and electrical energy. So the figure about 200 kilowatt hours, and the number of farmers trained on how to be our competitors, so be able to do what we do themselves profitably. About 500 farmers, because we don't see that as conflicting our growth. It's just it's what is needed. Like I said, 2 million farmers, so there's enough market for everyone. And the more are trained and making this product available, the more demand there is for such products and services. So what's next? Continue to extend this biostation model. So we gotta integrate the 3 processes, because the year is 12 months. Agricultural cycles are shorter, harvest cycles are shorter, etc., So you need to combine them. Keep it low tech, but efficient. Biochar is getting more use in the soil because of its carbon sequestration potential, but we probably all know that it is also used in making drinking water. So that those kind of uses can be more and more looked at as you're able to confirm the quality of it and so on. So these are the kinds of things that we look at. Ultimately, to increase the value creation per site. So it's not just research for research. And then continue to validate these business models, because ultimately what we want is new entrepreneurs just coming up and setting up what we do themselves, because it makes sense, right? So the stronger the business model, the more people will want to get in on it. So that is really the next step for us to continue that. So I think for me, it's over here, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Noel, for that introduction to your innovation. Next up, we have Claire Blankenberg, who is the CEO and leader of Real Gardening in Real Life.
Hi, everyone. So real gardening started as a way to help me to plant my own food. When I was 16, I actually won the Stockholm Junior Water Prize in 2003. When I realized this year that it's been 21 years since I won the Stockholm Junior Water Prize, it made me feel very, very old. But it is nice to be back in Sweden, especially to explain how much it has grown since then. So when the technology was developed, it really was just focused on enabling people to grow their own food with less water. But we really have expanded significantly across South Africa and other parts of Africa, with a strong focus on enabling mothers to be able to feed their children correctly. So to be able to plant at a household level and to eventually create systemic change through our school program that uses the garden as a teaching tool, but also explains to children how to do it themselves at home. A lot of the impact and growth that we've been able to achieve has been a result of first our collaboration with Securing Water for Food Grand Challenge, which then enabled us to grow even more with water energy for food. Just some statistics, which I'm sure lots of people are already aware of, but if you're not, the main thing basically in South Africa at the moment is that 1 in 4 children are currently stunted. And stunting doesn't mean that they're not going to grow tall, which is what lots of people think. Stunting means that their brain is stunted. So it means that it is impossible for them to grow cognitively beyond the age of 7. So no matter what you do later on, you can educate, additional programs, training, that it's impossible for the brain to capture more of that. So we see that as our core focus is to reverse that, and nutrition is critical, obviously, with making that change. We developed our garden in a box actually during COVID. Prior to COVID, we were very focused on schools. So it was the educational component, it was the school garden. Many of the communities we work in, the only meal that child receives is the one that they do at school. Schools closed during COVID, and we then were getting frantic calls from the principals. Just to put it into perspective, we've got about a couple over 3,000 schools on our program. So, and in each of those schools, it's between 900 and 1,500 children. So there's a lot of children reliant on food through those 3,000 schools. And we started to get calls from principals going, what do we do now? We can't allow people on the school grounds. We can't provide the food. Do we have a household solution? And this kind of prompted us into action. We created our household garden in a box mid-2020. We started our first training and distribution of it early 2021. And we now, I spoke to my team this morning, we've helped about 70,000 households since then. And the household garden in a box, it's really simple, but it just takes the seed tape technology, pre-packs it into a complete garden in a box, not big, about this big. I would have brought one if seed regulations weren't as they are. Didn't want to get into any trouble. So the garden in a box has, if you can see in the corner there, that's what the seed tape looks like, those little squares. Tomatoes red, parsley or basil. We do companion planting herbs for crop prevention as well as some medical or medicinal applications. You put the paper in the ground so that you can see the colored area above the soil, so you know exactly where to water. And then you just place your water on that on that little piece of paper. The nutrients, everything's inside there. The seeds protected from wind, from the water moving it. If a plant grows elsewhere, you know it's a weed, you can take it out immediately, so you're not wasting your time and water on something that's not going to provide food. We also put in, really simple, but it's made such a big difference, a little screw-on water spout that you just screw onto like a 2-liter soda bottle. And we then have an education program that teaches the households, you only need 2 liters of water a day to water your garden. And that water can be water that has been used to wash your food, wash your hands, depending on, obviously we train with regards to what you can use soap-wise, but dishwashing soap is fine. So how to collect that water, reuse it on the garden, and 16 square meters is all you need to be able to feed a family of 4 for an entire year. 2 liters of water a day. And we pre-pack it that each envelope is a different month of the year, pre-packed with 4 vegetables each month. And that's according to where that garden is going to be planted. Most optimum crops for that region, that area, and obviously with a focus on nutrition. And cost of 1 box is $22, and that will feed a family of 4, each with a serving of vegetables every day for a year. So it becomes accessible, simple, and we then realized that it's not obviously just about creating a great technology and saying, here, now there's a garden in a box. We then started to really look at the whole ecosystem and how we roll that out sustainably, so that this is a program that continues even when we as an organization are no longer funded by a program like We4F. So we have got a nonprofit organization called Real Life. Real Life, then we utilize the schools that we have previously and still have ongoing relationships with as nodes within those communities. We then have extension workers. We call them community champions. That community champion is trained to be a pillar within that community with all of the knowledge and resources that they need to be able to teach people how to grow their own food properly, and also be water stewards, water custodians, start to teach people about a dripping tap and report that, and simple water saving concepts around the community. We then invite households that want to join the program. A big thing is opt-in. You have to choose, you want to be part of the program. We invite them to join the program via WhatsApp. They scan a QR code. We then utilize WhatsApp mostly as a technology to then educate on when is the in-person training happening at the school, and then the ongoing monthly trainings. The program for the first year ran just at a food security level. We then started to realize that more and more households started to ask us, could they get another box from us to expand it so that they could sell their produce? We then started to create our income garden in a box, which is just packed with cash crops that we could then link to an off-taker. And we're getting there slowly, but 15% of our households have now transitioned to a point where they're not only food secure, but they're making on average 3,500 Rand, which doesn't really, it's like noddy money to you, but that's 10 times the monthly social grant. So they're making 10 times what they would have had given to them in their social grant from the government, just through selling produce from their backyards to the community. We also have now started to aggregate that produce into larger quantities, process it, and then sell it to off-takers. Why we're focused on transitioning into enabling more and more people to sell for income is because when we buy that produce back, we keep a percentage, a small percentage of that money, so that when they need seed again, they're effectively buying the seed again themselves. So it's a forced saving that ends up giving them the seed again for free. But it means that we are then no longer reliant as an NGO on grant money to be able to continually support the income growers. I spoke to this briefly. WhatsApp is really our biggest way of communicating. We do use it. We've got an app, Real Gardening. It tells you exactly what you need to do every day in your garden according to what you planted and when. It sends you a reminder to water. It'll tell you when to harvest. It'll tell you how much money you'll get for that crop. We're seeing that that's used in an urban environment, very rarely in a peri-urban and rural environment. In Southern Africa, that app element hasn't quite grasped. We are, however, seeing a stronger uptake, utilization of the app in the communities in Nigeria that we're working in. So that was just an interesting observation. And then, yeah, so just on recorded, we have 56,483 households that are consistently on our program. We have rolled out 70,000, so that kind of gives you an idea of the rate of people that have planted versus the number of people that are continuing to be active. It doesn't mean that the remainder haven't planted, it's just that they're not actively communicating back with us. 9.1 kilograms of produce grown, 122 million liters of water saved. That would be in comparing traditional planting methods to our method, and only in the first 6 weeks, because post-germination and seeing the seedling, you can localize water in a normal environment should you wish to. And 274 million rand, which is a big number, in additional income. So this is either income that has been made through selling of produce, or income that has been saved because you're no longer purchasing the produce, you now are able to utilize that money on something else. Majority of people in our program, when they save their money, they're utilizing it either on something to do with education for their kids, be it paying for the to go to school. School isn't free in South Africa. You still have to pay a little bit, or school shoes or stationery supplies. Or funny enough, the other extreme is electricity. So it's either getting paid on education or electricity, but both are obviously bettering people's lives. Our big goal is to have 500,000 beneficiaries on our program. On average, we're seeing about 4.4 people in each household. So we round that down to 4. So that is our focus is to get 125,000 people on the program. So we've got about 50,000 more to go. And we are looking to expand more in the Nigeria area, and in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's really where our vision is for the next 18 months or so. And yeah, that's just a little bit. I think this slide should have been earlier. Sorry about that. That just shows the water spout. Again, just really simple, but we've seen it make such a difference in people's utilization of grey water, and obviously not overwatering their plants, and making it just fun. Like the bottle gets filled every day. It's yay, can we water our plants? It's just a really simple innovation that's made a big difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire, for highlighting what's going on with your innovation and all that you're achieving. Finally, we have Chris Ailey. He's joining us virtually. Present. And he is the founder and CEO of Kivu Green, a company in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which operates a web and mobile service. So Chris, if you're ready.
Hello, I'm ready. Hi. Okay, morning everyone. I'm Chris Ayale. I'm CEO of Kivu Green Corporation. I'm coming in from DRC. DRC is a French country. And I'm sorry, I will present my presentation in French. So, comme je le disais avant, je viens de la République démocratique du Congo, où nous avons notre solution, notre entreprise dénommée Kivu Green Corporation, dont moi je suis le représentant, le CEO de l'entreprise. Next. Kivu Green, nous sommes basés en République démocratique du Congo, là où nous avons constaté que la majorité des petits producteurs ont du mal à avoir accès au marché, mais aussi à avoir accès aux informations agricoles. Mais dans le cadre du programme Water Energy for Food, nous avons mis accent sur le problème qui est lié à l'accès au marché, donc au problème qui est lié à l'accès aux informations agricoles. Les petits producteurs n'ont pas l'accès à la météo agricole et aussi aux informations agricoles. C'est-à-dire qu'ils ne savent pas quand, comment et où planter des cultures et comment sélectionner des bonnes semences pour un endroit donné. Et face au changement climatique, ils ne savent pas la période où il y aura de la prévision météorologique, ils ne savent pas quand il y aura pluie. Maintenant, nous avons proposé une solution qui est une plateforme qui est dotée par une intelligence artificielle qui connecte les petits producteurs au marché et aussi aux informations agricoles, notamment la météo agricole, les prix du marché et les conseils agricoles par rapport à une agriculture résiliente face au changement climatique. Next. Nous avons mis en place, c'est une solution qui est basée par, nous utilisons les solutions intelligence artificielle pour aider les petits producteurs à interagir avec notre plateforme, à faire l'interaction avec notre plateforme dans langue locale et surtout, nos solutions fonctionnent avec ou sans connexion Internet. Vous savez que en République démocratique du Congo, dans toute l'Afrique, on a un sérieux problème de connectivité. Maintenant, nous avons innové en mettant en place une solution qui fonctionne sans connexion Internet et aussi, nous avons innové en mettant en place une solution vocale. Donc, les agriculteurs analphabètes qui ne savent pas lire et écrire, ils peuvent facilement utiliser notre solution via la voix vocale et puis ils vont recevoir des prévisions météorologiques. Donc, chaque matin, ils vont recevoir que les appels téléphoniques en décrochant, ils vont écouter que la météo agricole à langue locale. Au-delà de ça, nous faisons plus de sensibilisation vu que les petits producteurs dans notre pays, ils sont vraiment sceptiques de tout ce qui est innovation. Maintenant, pour vraiment faciliter l'adoption de nos solutions, nous faisons plus de sensibilisation en mettant en place des partenariats avec des coopératives agricoles. Nous faisons des formations par rapport à l'utilisation de nos solutions. Nous leur montrons comment nos solutions vont leur aider à augmenter les rendements agricoles, augmenter les revenus. Et nous sélectionnons plus les chefs de coopératives parce que les agriculteurs sont actuellement regroupés dans des coopératives agricoles. Maintenant, chaque chef de coopérative agricole, nous les sensibilisons, nous les formons par rapport à notre innovation. C'est à lui maintenant d'aller aussi former d'autres agriculteurs par rapport à notre solution. Maintenant, nous avons mis en place plusieurs partenariats avec des ONG. Les ONG aussi, ils nous aident plus à vulgariser nos solutions. Parce qu'ici, chez nous, on a plusieurs ONG. Ils ont presque le même programme de facilitation, d'avoir accès aux informations agricoles que nous donnons directement aux agriculteurs. Maintenant, eux, ils suggèrent qu'on met, au lieu de recréer la même chose, il vaut mieux de travailler avec Kivu Green, qui est déjà pionnier dans ce secteur et aider les agriculteurs à avoir accès à notre plateforme. Nous faisons plus de formations et nous avons des mécanismes pour récolter le feedback des agriculteurs parce que c'est très important. Ça nous a aidé plus à améliorer notre solution parce qu'avant, on avait une solution qui fonctionnait avec la connexion Internet. Maintenant, grâce au feedback que nous collectons via nos ambassadeurs, parce que dans chaque zone de production, il y a des ambassadeurs, ils donnent des feedbacks d'amélioration de nos solutions et puis nous intégrons ça pour que nos solutions soient meilleures et aider les petits agriculteurs. Next. Maintenant, du côté résultat, actuellement, on a déjà atteint plus de 121 000 utilisateurs finaux, dont 55% sont des femmes. Vous savez que chez nous, en RDC, la majorité des agriculteurs sont des femmes et notre solution, nous visons plus à, à, à intégrer les femmes qui puissent utiliser notre solution, vu que la majorité de, ces produits, de nos utilisateurs et la majorité des acteurs du secteur agricole sont des femmes. Grâce à notre solution, nous avons produit au moins plus de 50 000 tonnes de produits agricoles. Grâce à notre solution, parce que nous aidons les agriculteurs à avoir la prévision météorologique, ça va leur aider à stocker l'eau. Et puis, quand ils stockent l'eau, et puis ça va leur aider aussi à produire durablement et augmenter les rendements agricoles. Maintenant, grâce à ça, nous avons aidé les agriculteurs à produire au moins 50 000 tonnes. Maintenant, du côté eau, nous avons aidé les petits agriculteurs à stocker au moins plus de 71 millions de litres depuis qu'on a commencé notre programme avec Water Energy for Food en 2022. Du côté hectare, pour voir l'impact de notre solution du côté hectare, maintenant, nous avons atteint au moins plus de 50 000 hectares que nous couvrons grâce à notre solution de la météo agricole, grâce à notre solution aussi des conseils agricoles pour les aider à augmenter les rendements agricoles. Next. Maintenant, enfin, nous, les étapes, donc notre vision dans le futur, nous comptons comment étendre notre service de la météo agricole, mais aussi des informations agricoles dans toute la RDC. La RDC, c'est un pays, vraiment, c'est un pays continent, c'est un grand marché pour nous, puisque là, on n'est que dans des provinces sur 26. Donc, on a vraiment un grand marché que nous devons conquérir pour que d'autres agriculteurs qui sont dans d'autres provinces qui puissent bénéficier de nos solutions. Donc, on doit étendre. Au-delà des étendre, il nous faut des moyens parce que chaque extension, ça demande des moyens. C'est pourquoi nous sommes dans un programme avec Water Energy for Food pour voir comment on peut avoir des investisseurs. Ils puissent nous aider à faire face à ce grand marché qui est devant nous et qui vous bringe jusque-là. C'est une innovation pionnière en RDC. Donc, c'est une opportunité pour nous de conquérir d'autres provinces et aider ces agriculteurs. Nous allons continuer toujours à faire des formations parce que des formations et des sensibilisations, ça nous permet toujours à faciliter l'adoption de nos solutions. Et aussi, nous avons renforcé notre partenariat avec des ONG. Grâce à eux, ils nous facilitent à faire la vulgarisation de nos solutions. Sans oublier que dans le futur, nous comptons introduire d'autres technologies, notamment des technologies de télérigation. Ça va aider aux activités de mieux gérer l'eau, mais via le téléphone mobile. Quand on lance l'irrigation directement, on peut avoir des statistiques sur téléphone. On a irrigué combien de mètres cubes et les aider toujours avec les informations pour adopter leurs pratiques agricoles dans le sens de faire face aux résiliences, donc de faciliter les agriculteurs de faire face aux résiliences, tout ce qui est changement climatique. Au-delà de ça, nous allons améliorer plus notre technologie AI. Nous l'améliorons surtout du côté langue. Nous intégrons des langues locales pour aider notre solution vocale qui puisse donner des informations vraiment qui sont top aux agriculteurs. Donc ici, chez nous, en RDC, on a plus de 400 langues locales. Jusque-là, on est dans 7. Maintenant, on est en train d'enrichir notre AI. On va continuer à enrichir et aider les agriculteurs analphabètes qui ne savent pas lire et écrire de comprendre la météo agricole à langue locale, de comprendre aussi les conseils à langue locale. C'est pourquoi nous disons merci beaucoup au programme Water Energy for Food et surtout à notre hub de Seeds in Central Africa. Ça nous a aidé plus à améliorer nos solutions. Grâce à eux, ils nous ont donné des technical assistance. Et aujourd'hui, on est très fiers d'avoir atteint plus de 121 000 utilisateurs finaux de notre solution. Et nous disons merci beaucoup. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing your innovation. Next, if Mashiri, Noel, and Claire could come up here and we'll have some quick questions about your participation in We4F. So To begin, I think a good question would be for Mashiri and maybe highlighting how the hubs went about identifying the innovators and creating outreach and encouraging people's interest. Obviously, when you're working with a donor program, it comes with a lot of paperwork and monitoring and evaluation. So how did you really convince these organizations to participate in the program?
Thanks so much, Katie, and hello, everyone. So as you know, my name is Mashiri now. I'm very privileged to be working with these wonderful companies in Southern and Central Africa, working with 32 of them, including, of course, Real Gardening, Careful Green that just presented. And I'll just give you a rundown of how we really went through this process when we began. So obviously the process would go through like an open call for innovations, but we did know very well when we started that we needed to be inclusive, especially that our region was quite diverse. We cover Southern and Central Africa, which is Francophone, Lusophone, and Anglophone. So we knew from the get-go that we needed to be inclusive. And therefore, our outreach strategy and communication needed to also reflect that in terms of like how we communicate, both in French and in English. Once we sort of like went through that first hurdle, we then also knew that because our region, again, is very diverse, we needed to work with in-country actors. So we identified local business associations, chambers of commerce, accelerators, and other innovation hubs as well within the countries, so that we could work with them to disseminate the information and also really get them to help us recommend some very good companies to work with. But I guess what we didn't really know at that time was the diversity of the innovations that would come through to us. And to really make sense of that, when we eventually got the application through, we then set up a regional advisory body, which, if you like, was a group of external experts in the water, energy, food space, really for them to help us make sense of the innovation types we're receiving through the evaluation process. But I think lastly, without taking much time, Katie, we really wanted to make sure that when the applications, before the applications were coming through and when they came through, we held what we called informational webinars or Q&A webinars, as we often call them, to really make sure that before you submit your interest, these are the requirements, but more importantly, to answer questions that often companies would have. If I'm like this, do I qualify? If I'm like this, what do I need to do? If I need to make a partnership and the like. So we made sure that for each round, for example, we would have like 2 of those informational webinars to make sure that we answer questions prior to the submission of applications. And that also helped us when we do the evaluations, because then, we answered a lot of questions that then we didn't have to deal with at evaluation. So really, I know press for time, so I'll just pause here, Katie, and I'll be happy to give more insights, time permitting.
Thanks. And on the flip side, for Noel and Chris, Noel, Chris and Claire, what convinced you? Like, aside from the webinars, aside from learning about this opportunity, what support did you receive that really made it worth it to participate in We4F?
I'll let you go first.
I was fortunate enough to be part of a program that was kind of like a precursor to We4F, called Securing Water for Food. Sorry. And that taught me a lot about reporting and the parameters that you need to work within and be audited and all of that by the likes of USAID. When we started with the Securing Water for Food program, we were quite in our infancy as an organization, and it really was an absolute shock. At the time, it felt like it was a lot of red tape that we couldn't understand why we were having to go through as a small organization. But it was so critical for us to have that those parameters, checks and balances put in for us to be able to grow. It really created a good foundation for us. So when the Water Energy for Food opportunity came forward, we looked at it as not only a way to obviously expand our impact with a partner that we've already started to trust a lot, being the collaboration of governments that have come together to make this grand challenge happen. But we also have looked at it as a way for us to understand, okay, now what are the next level of checks and balances and parameters we need to put in place to be able to make sure that we are scaling our organization correctly and being able to report on our impact correctly and being able to audit elements within the organization correctly. And that's really where what this program has in its technical assistance capability is really, in my opinion, next level.
Thanks. Just to add to that, maybe if I can summarize the program for us, it's an investment readiness program that also finances part of your path towards investment readiness. So as a private business, you have little to lose. I mean, you have to spend time to do the reporting and do a lot of stuff that is not directly impacting your business, but essentially that's what it is. And then beyond that, what we learned along the way was that by having these frequent gatherings of the innovators in these locations, I don't know if there were 6 or something like that. So it's a lot in a positive way, because it meant you have time to build momentum as you meet each other, you talk. Maybe I speak to 5 of you today and then we never speak again. You know, maybe I speak to 1 of the 5 again. But when if we see each other 5 times, probably we end up doing something concrete with 1 of them. And that's what happened. So at the end of it, things are happening. You know, there's lots of discussions that started in Bangkok, for example, that are translating to concrete projects on the ground. I won't bore you with the details here, but that is the added value that was unexpected and huge, because you speak in the same language. You know, you're doing the same things at the same time.
But
Can
I add one more thing
that
we've forgotten about? I think, and we just take it for granted, but because we're in the space, but a big part of the program is you have to get match funding. So to be able to, to be supported by We4F, you have to come with the equivalent amount of money. But the opportunity, we kind of utilized the opportunity that We4F was going to put this money on the table to be able to unlock money from clients that we hadn't actually had the opportunity to work with, multinationals such as Nestle. And that gave Nestle kind of security in the fact that, okay, well, if they're getting money from here, it's not a risky match for us. And because then the project went so well, the pilot project with Nestle, we've been able to grow with them as an organization outside of this program. So I think the credibility of the partners that have come together open a lot of other doors with companies that necessarily would have maybe seen it as too risky to do a pilot project with you.
Great, thank you so much. Chris, if you're still online, would maybe you like to have the final comment for this short panel session? Is he? Okay, well,
so then
we got him for a bit of time. Noelle, maybe if you'd like to.
What she's saying is so interesting. I mean, it's as we say it, as I realize the impact, like what's a social entrepreneur? We can debate that all day. But what this program helped to do is also give you that check and balance so that you are living up to this claim. And then, as she said, you can grow in that way, because everyone wants to have impact, everyone, but who's actually doing it, this program helps make sure of that. And then you can add this kind of leverage effect that it had was also quite significant for us, even though we were already starting a scaling phase, but there was definitely new things that, were could have taken 2 years that ended up taking 3 months, because you could bring something to the table concrete and they felt that it wasn't a full punt or a shot in the dark because you were vetted already by this program. Because a lot of the impact innovation needs to be validated, and that's where everything dies on paper. And this program unlocked a lot of that. So I'll stop here.
Great. Thank you so much for your thoughts on your participation. And it's been wonderful to have you in the program. So kind of move us along, we're going to skip the next Mentimeter and instead welcome on stage next our second panel. So we have Jacob Granite, who is the Director General of CETA, Eva Schroeder, the head of the water team at the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Inclusive Green Growth Department, and Claudia Ringler, the Director of the Natural Resources and Resilience Unit at the International Food Policy Research Institute. Thank you all for joining. To kick off this panel, we've heard the innovator perspective on why they joined this program, but another question to reflect on from the donor side is why create one global program with regional innovation hubs? Why not create independent individual programs that focus on specific countries or regions? So maybe Jacob, if you'd like to kick us off.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to backtrack slightly a little bit because I had the fortune to work with many colleagues on the research side in preparing for the Bonn conference in 2011, where sort of this water, energy, food nexus theme was really put in place, conceptually. So the metrics on how much water is used for energy production and water for agriculture and energy connections and so forth was really put forward in that conference. Now, so of course, I have done other things in between, but now coming back and learning about this program, this particular one, how it's been developing over time, I think is fantastic to see. I mean, our colleagues here from the innovators have really put forward, what is impact investing? How can we use the concept to provide social change? And how can we, really manage this scarce resource for food, nutrition, agriculture efficiency, and so forth? So I think just an applaud to you guys been doing it. It is wonderful to see, a concept 2011 into practice and the people doing it on the ground. So I think, that conference was quite instrumental in a sense because it brought so many different donors and interested people together, organizations, research. Many of them still are here. So by pooling resources like we have been doing now, it's the way to move forward because public financing in terms of tax funding that we administrate, my Swedish agency, is very limited. It's a super scarce resource, almost like water, right? So one have to identify opportunities to leverage more resources and get the private sector engaged and finance these issues. So by pooling our resources, knowledge, scarce public financing, and partnering with the private sector and innovators that really move on, it's one way to do it. So I think this demonstrates it works.
Thanks. Eva, if you'd like to continue.
Yeah, perhaps, and I think I totally agree, especially at sessions like this, it's so also inspiring for me to actually also get to know the program a little bit better and get inspired by your stories. And then we come with the donor perspective, which is perhaps a bit more boring for the audience in the room, but your question is about why we do this together. And I think you explained it wonderfully. Of course, we can go and continue with our own programs in individual countries, but especially when you want to work on this nexus, you need to do it in partnership. And I think this program has been a very good example of that. And I think also for the innovators to have these hubs that they can go to, we learned about the red tape. And if you have to cut through the red tape with individual programs all the time, it makes it much more difficult. So, and perhaps as a last point, also the learning component that was also addressed by one of the speakers, that if you scale a program like this and you can learn from other innovators, not only in your own region, but also in other region, then you can, take it to the next level. And I think that came from the speakers here as well.
Claudia?
Yeah, just wanted to come in and to just say, all the research has shown like longer term programs, collaborative programs where donors align are much more impactful. So I think that's a very, very clear additional, I think, entry point here of why you have worked together. And I think presumably you have also learned from each other. But, those are, you mentioned already, these kind of exchanges here, you can learn and hopefully infuse new ideas into your funding programs as well. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And another component of the learning is the creation of water and energy for food. It used to be 2 grand challenges that resulted in this one and in the focus on the nexus. So obviously we're at World Water Week, but could you maybe talk a little bit about why the energy component is critical, and why you can't just address water and food together? Claudia?
Okay, sure. I mean, maybe then I should also say I was also at the 2011 conference, and IFPRI, we were the food resource center in that nexus, so provided some insights from that point of view. So it's good to be back on stage. Yeah, so energy is obviously critical. I mean, I work in agriculture and food, and it's a very slow moving process. And then whenever we deal with energy, it's moving very quickly. There's a lot of money going into it. There's a lot of innovation happening, and the way the specific energy access and use portfolios that rural households and food producers and anyone else in the agri-food system has is an incredibly defining for food security, nutrition, income generation, and everything. So energy is labor, energy is agrochemicals, energy is obviously the energy source used to move food. And again, because we talk quite a bit about water here, we've done some analysis that it takes 10,000 hours of labor to irrigate 1 hectare with a manual, like with these little watering cans that we still see on pictures. We do not want to see them on pictures anymore. So as soon as you get a mechanized irrigation technology, it actually becomes profitable. Cannot be profitable otherwise. That doesn't take away from all these important little household kitchens that women control, manage, have the income over. We certainly want to support those. But if you want to actually support food security, you do need a stable, ideally a clean energy source.
Yeah. Thank you. Eva or Jacob, would you like to?
Yeah, well, I can add, I think our colleague here put it very well forward. I mean, it was easy to say that if you produce hydropower, yes, there's a huge amount of need for water, right? Storage and pumping and so forth. But the metrics on how much water was used in agriculture wasn't really, I think, explored fully, which has been done now by many. And the argument, of course, in terms of managing the scarce resource efficiently, but also the climate change argument has been very, very strong. So the food system sector, like transport, navigation, or energy production in general, also has to, to deal with this issue. So it's a key driving force, I mean, for sustainability to manage the input of energy into agriculture. So I think that's been demonstrated here. And of course, it's about costs, I mean, and reliability. In many of the examples we heard about here, we didn't speak so much about South African energy challenges and so forth, but it's not a reliable resource, right? We know that. So even large-scale agriculture is threatened to a large degree because on and off of electricity. So to identify these small-scale solutions, and we heard about the biogenerators and so forth, is a way to mitigate risk in, related to the energy system. So I think it's great. What I learned in my new job here is that, when we say nexus a little bit easy, in the other part of the community, the nexus is really humanitarian assistance and development. So sometimes nexus can be used a little bit different. So it's good for us to keep that in mind in this community.
Thank you.
Yeah, but just small addition, but I think the aspect of that there is the opportunity to reduce emissions also on a small scale that we should feed actually into every program that we do to make it climate smart, and that we look at that in everything that we do. I mean, through the whole all programs that we do from ODA budget, this climate mainstreaming is extremely important. So also at this small level. And I think the other aspect that you mentioned rightly is cost. I mean, it's very important also to look at the trade-off. Is the investment really giving it, pays off at the household level? And energy savings can play a very big part in that. And again, when we talk about energy and water, there's another trade-off that we have to be careful about when energy becomes free or cheap. And then we have to look at the water aspect. Do we not overexploit the water? If the water with irrigation pumps, it's there, it's flowing, we think, oh, that's great. And we sort of overexploit the resources. And then again, we have to come to this nexus. I know there are many nexuses in development cooperation, but this nexus to use all the scarce resources that we have, which is energy, it's water, as good as we can. So any good program, to my mind, should have this nexus in mind.
Great, thank you. And yeah, you kind of highlighted it, that there's many different nexus that exist. And maybe for a final question, what do you all think of the future of this? Is it going to stay water, energy, food? Is it going to expand to include other elements? And even within the global agenda, do you think it's going to still focus on sectoral logics, or change to kind of be more cross-sectoral and address challenges in that manner?
Well, I think maybe to make it also personal, I think this nexus is here to stay. And also, you were saying about your experience in food. My previous job was in climate diplomacy and climate finance negotiating. And also amongst ourselves, we should sort of champion this nexus in the way that we work. And just on the multilateral processes, how we also as the Netherlands really try to integrate food systems into the NDCs, the national determined contributions, so the climate plans that country make, that we introduce food systems there, that we talk about water when we talk about NDCs. And it's also that we focus in the financing that we do, that we look at these public-private partnerships, that we look at the integration of energy, solar and water in an integrated manner. So I think this program, I was not there in 2011, but I think well, maybe it was not ahead of the curve, but at least it was on the curve of where we are now. Not so smaller scale when we talk about the innovative programs that we learned today, but also larger scale. When we speak to partners like UNICEF or the World Bank, well, we keep them accountable on this nexus. So yeah, maybe as some general remarks.
I can add, I mean, as we've been talking in this type of conference and across the globe on integrated water resource management and so forth, how do we do it in practice? The nexus approach was really a way, I think, to clarify that and to demonstrate that there are these strong connections and you cannot work separately. I think we have so many examples of that in this panel and by our colleagues. So it is an approach which is systematic, and when you link it to investments and finance and job creation, then it becomes, you know, real and strong. So in the World Cloud that we did, I think the picture that came up, if I saw correctly, in the middle there was financing, right? And financing impact investing in social entrepreneurs is difficult. I mean, how do you measure return? Who is actually willing to pay and so forth? So business models will be super important moving forward. Next step also to look at I think our colleague here at the end mentioned that. What's the financing architecture for this? Who can come in and finance these entrepreneurs as they move from, you know, in the early stages into more mature companies, hopefully. So that would be an important element, I think, in the next steps. And we are gaining so much knowledge now how to use guarantees, how to use blended finance options in our joint community, which I think we can put to bear in a program like this, which has that element even stronger to ensure that those investments that have been innovated here will continue to grow and exist at the end.
Great, thank you. Claudia.
Yeah. I just would like to add something from the research side. If there is another program, I don't know the exact timing of this particular program. So I've, you know, heard of lots of very interesting and innovative approaches, but from a research perspective, you know, we need a kind of rigorous impact assessment to actually really say conclusively, this has changed nutrition in this way, this has you know, affected time use of women or has increased their agency empowerment. So if we could get some good impact assessment going, like of the top 5, you know, for example, innovations, and then we have a very strong basis to scale them out much more rapidly and to get more donors into this. I think that would be something to consider. In terms of the nexus, this is a water, energy for food, but of course, everyone here talked about the environment. So this is really already a water, energy, food environmental nexus. So I think it's there, but it's not as explicit. So you could add the double E next time. And then of course, nutrition came up a lot. And so again, you know, we can be a bit more straightforward on the nutrition side. And yes, nutrition and NDCs, there's a lot of conflicts actually. So that's a very good, I'm glad you focus on that. Yeah, I think that's what I would say for the way forward. And obviously, you know, keep that good program going if you can get it going, given with all of our financial constraints. But it sounds like you have ways to overcome them. It's good. Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for your participation in this panel. And yeah, I'd like to kind of close this out and offer up some Q&A time for the audience and for those online. If you have any questions for the innovators, for Mashiri, for the donors we heard from today.
I just wanted to echo the whole nutrition aspect, because that got lost in everything for me as a public health nutrition. Because you started out your wonderful project because of nutrition. And so I don't know, are you doing any sort of nutrition monitoring, diet diversity? Have you seen any changes in stunting? Of course, we know that takes years and years. And where is that in all of this? And that's, I appreciated the IFPRI's comments on that, because it's critical, particularly to the mission that you stated you have.
Thanks. Yes. So I suppose because I'm working in it, we kind of just take it for granted that the messaging comes through. So the sorry. Is that better? Okay. So the households that we're working in, yes, we've seen a substantial increase in mostly 76% on our records at the moment. The households that we are working with didn't usually, and by usually is more than twice per month, have vegetables within their diet. So in South Africa, it's majority pup and then some form of meat every now and again. Most people just get by with pup and milk. So, or white bread. So just the intake of vegetables is what we were. So we do have quite a lot of data that we collect prior to starting the program. How many times a month or a week did you eat vegetables on your plate? And then after joining the program, has that changed? So we do have a very concrete data set with regards to that. Further than that, it's for us to be able to start to track stunting, or from a clinical standpoint, is kind of outside of our abilities financially and with the current state of the South African healthcare system. So at the moment, the data we can go on is just you were eating no vegetables practically, and now you are having vegetables at least 5 times a week in 76% of the households that we're working in. So for us, that does anecdotally show that there is an increase, that you're eating more vegetables. But I mean, that will be better for your health to have the micronutrient intake. But yes, the step further than that, we don't have the ability. I mean, we would love to, but it's not our job. Okay, I hope that answers the question. Any other?
Thank you very much. We had a previous session this morning on water biodiversity, food nexus. I heard you say add the E of environmental, but what of the B of biodiversity?
Thank you. I think it's pretty much agreed now, like as you said, that the E has been coming very clearly now. But I think it's also good to note that the B also is really very important. So I think in terms of, for example, the biodiversity and environment in our cohort, for example, we do have that already. Of course, it's called the water and energy for food, but actually in our program, we also have the biodiversity and environment. Key examples, for example, in South Africa, where Claire's from, we do have a company called Meat Natural, for example, which is into sustainable rangeland management, working with communities to sort of like, work through an eco ranger funding model and raise carbon credits from that. We do have the same like in Zambia, where we try to preserve the Miombo woodlands, working with cooperatives and communities as well. In DRC, in Uvira, for example, we do have a company called Nabaya that are also very much into the environment and the biodiversity. So I just wanted to give that sort of like clarity to say, yeah, I think when at design level, when I was not yet there, I think it was water and energy for food, but clearly we see the E and the B in our innovations as well. So I think it's just like taking time to come through clearly, but definitely it's already existing. Thanks.
And if I can add to that on the food part, the biodiversity on the soil, I think is that one that jumps out as, I mean, there's so many things you can say about that, but it's getting more and more concrete than soil organic matter, soil biodiversity can compete directly in some areas with mineral fertilizer. So that's at the forefront for a lot of the companies in the cohort that work on organic fertilizer production.
I'd also like to state really briefly that we also have an indicator that measures the innovations that actually are tracking their impact on biodiversity as well. So that's something we also look at. Thank you.
Yes, so I think, many interesting innovations here, and it's good you add the E for environment, but I was wondering a little bit about the E for energy. It didn't come out so clearly, especially the use of renewable energy in agriculture. There are now cheap solar panels and, wind and so forth that could be used for small scale irrigation. Do you have any examples of that? Yeah.
Yes, we do. And I think with the energy component, really, I think it was just silent because this is World Water Week, but we do have quite a lot in renewable energy, for example, future technologies like biogas, for example, we do have quite a lot of that. Even solar irrigation as well, that runs on either solar panels or some other technology. So we actually do have that. It's just that we were wanting to have the water component come out stronger, but definitely it exists. Thanks.
Yeah, and like Mashiri mentioned, the energy component is strongly there. It's where most of our end user financing actually exists in terms of innovations we've worked with. So you have the solar powered irrigation across all of the regions. You have the biogas across 4 of them, I would say, and there's other associated savings with some of the digital technologies, and they've also worked to like make sure that the solar panels are even more like gender inclusive. So one of our innovators in India, Claro Energy, actually redesigned their solar panels so that way they could be moved by women in fields for when they're doing pumping.
And if I can add one unique one in the Western cohort, was the West Africa cohort, was using solar panels, generate electricity, but using electricity to power convection stoves. So that for me was a bit rare because we tend to go to biogas for clean cooking or briquettes, but to go for convection stoves using solar panels, that was a bit different.
I thank you for some inspiring talks. I was a bit interested in that behavior change component at the local level. So to set up a market, for instance, of putting waste to work or creating a demand for vegetables, for instance, when you normally don't eat vegetables, is it only a question of accessibility, or is there also some behavior change components that you sort of do to water the field to sort of increase the demand for the products that you are producing? We are trying to do some of the same in our programs in Togo and in Kenya, and changing the attitudes toward that waste have value is not easy. So I was just interested in that sort of attitude change that needs to sort of assess some of these products as actually being valuable in the market.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So twofold. In some of this households, it was purely about economics. So it's not just about the cost of the vegetable themselves. It's about most of the time the transport to go and get that vegetable, and the fact that because you have no way to refrigerate it or keep it fresh, you can't justify that taxi trip to go and buy, a couple of tomatoes or heads of spinach that are then, because you can't buy bulk because then it's going to go off. So you end up having to then buy it from someone that's on selling within that community. And we often see, well, most of the time, that then it is really being sold on for a huge markup. So that was a lot of our unlocking of being able to sell locally as well, is that a big part of the education around when we start up a household to be able to, now they're food secure, but now they're selling, is that this is the fair price for this. You don't have to undersell yourself, but you can sell the produce at the same price that it would be sold at the supermarket. You don't have to undersell yourself, but obviously you don't have to make a huge markup. So yes, it was the economics around it. That is at an older level. In the younger children, they were adverse to eating the vegetables until they had actually gone through the growing process. And in many of the instances when we did interviews across 200 schools with different ages of children, and mostly it was because vegetables were quite foreign to them, so it wasn't something that they were used to seeing or eating. So children, I've got to hate vegetables at the best of times. Now, if it's something that is completely, that's not something your parents have even tried to feed you, it was not eaten. So that's why for a long period in the beginning of the National School Nutrition Program, they actually started to put more grains in the National School Nutrition Program and remove a lot of the vegetable component just because the kids weren't eating it. When we started to do the school garden and link it to the curriculum, so each class got their own garden and learn and grow kit, we call it a garden pod. When those kids started to connect with, that's my beetroot or that's my spinach, they wanted to taste it, and all of a sudden they were then, when they saw that spinach that they had seen grown now coming out of the school nutrition program kitchen and being put next to the pup on their plate, they were more interested in eating it. So yeah, it was a two, and then they would go home and ask their mom, can we have this on our plate now? So yeah, it was a bit of both.
Maybe one final question.
Okay, so to the funders, what's next? You did really great here, apparently, and so what's next?
That's a spot on question. And we didn't discuss it on stage because that's something that we're still deliberating on, how to move forward. Because some of this innovation, I mean, they can move forward to other types of programming that was mentioned also by my colleague before. And in other ways, we're trying to see how we can, fit them in other programs there for the moment, but I leave it to my colleague from USAID. I think she's better placed to do that. There is not a next phase of the program foreseen. But we're working really hard also with the colleague behind me to see how we can especially work with innovation that still needs this sort of grant type of funder money to take it forward. But perhaps.
No, thank you for your question. And I don't really have much more to add, but what I'll say is, just as Eva mentioned, I think we're still in process of discussing what the next phase will look like. Like one of my colleagues mentioned on stage, there's been sort of previous prequels to We4F. So we had the Powering Ag that focused on energy. Then we had SWIFT, Securing Water for Food, that focused on water. And so with We4F, we sort of had that nexus approach with water, energy, and food. So we're not quite sure what the next iteration will look like. And we're still in process of thinking through. And that's why we're here to kind of, gather insights from the larger community of practice and kind of help us inform what that deliberation and decision-making process will look like. but we're more than happy to announce it if we do come up with something interesting.
Great. Well, thank you for your input and thank you for all your questions. If you're interested in learning more about water and energy for food, you can visit our website, we4f.org. There's also QR codes on some of the tables that will take you to the program final evaluation, as well as annual report and our resources library.
I know we haven't met.